Here we have Vanessa. Vanessa, how you doing today?
I'm doing so good. How are you?
Doing great. And who's this lovely model you have
This
here?
is my model, Evelyn.
You said there's something unique about Evelyn.
We call it virgin hair. We call it unicorn hair because those are rare, slim to none around here.
Yeah, yeah. And she's been growing it out, obviously. She kind of just wears it straight. You gonna bring her into the style world?
Definitely, yes. I'm excited to make a complete transformation on her. I like to play with my placement a lot because I feel like with the right placement, I can do less foils but still create a very dramatic look. I'm also a really big fan of curtain bangs. Those flowy 70s inspired bangs, that is my favorite era. I absolutely love it. And I'm gonna make those stand out a little bit more utilizing a money piece. That's another one of my current obsessions.
Right on. Well, let's get started and see what happens.
Perfect. So I pre-sectioned her hair because she has so much hair. It kind of gives me a working guide and I can just pull them out, resection the top half again, just again to make it easier on me. And I'm gonna give myself a little bit of working room just because after I do her color, I do want to check the haircut and make sure the placement works well for what I'm achieving today. So what I like to do to determine where the hair naturally parts, I pull the hair back, put my hand right on top of her head and just gently push forward. And as you can see, the hair will naturally start to fall and that is where her natural part is. So now I'm gonna part out the sections that I'm gonna use for my curtain bang. I took the two thin pieces just outside of the center of her part line. And again, I wanna emphasize her lips as a focal point when people look at her, because again, that is where the eye is going to be drawn. I'm gonna line it up. And I'm gonna give it a little snip there. So then I'm gonna take a little section that I'm gonna need to cut into and I'm gonna use some tension to pull it straight just to make sure I can see the line, and then I'm gonna hold it taut and I'm gonna slide cut to blend out the curtain bangs. And there we have our next guide. Again, I'm gonna pull the next section over with some tension, pull it taut to make sure they line up, and this is again my new guide to blend out to the rest of the haircut. Because she has straight hair, I can utilize tension. However, if you have a client that has very extremely wavy hair or curly hair, you however cannot pull the tension. Clients that have curly hair and wear it curly, if you pull the curl down and cut that curl off, their curl is gonna bounce back up and they're gonna end up with a cute little mini fro that they may or may not have wanted. Okay, so every time I pull a section out to connect it, I go about 1 inch apart until I feel that it has completely connected to the back. I'm taking a diagonal parting just because this will frame diagonally. So I'm gonna pull my next section out and I'm gonna look for my new guide. My new guide is going to be the last piece I cut in my last slide cut of her face frame. So as we can see, it's getting closer to the end, so therefore my haircut is almost completely connected. Since we are so close to completely connecting the haircut, I'm gonna take another section and check it. So now I only have about 1 inch to connect, so this will be my last parting. I'm gonna find my guide and I'm gonna repeat the exact same step. And now the haircut connects. I am very right hand dominant and that is why my positioning is different. I turn my body away from her, pull the hair taut, and I wanna flow this way. I just have more control with my hand and its placement and where it's going. But when I work from my left side, because I am so right hand dominant, I will check this side more frequently just to make sure they're matching up. Sometimes, depending on where their part line is, they will have more hair on one side than the other. That's why it is important to take a small section from the center of the part and just blend it out. Also, you can look at points in their body as reference points to make sure where it's even. Once it's complete, I will also go through and texturize and point cut the ends just to kind of create a little bit more diffusion and flow. So now I am gonna give her some layers for volume because she has so much hair and it's beautiful and it's heavy. It is gonna make it lighter on her head as well as just give her a more polished and finished look than what she originally had. When I do my layering, I like to start from the top of her head and pull everything back and take a small triangle section I'm gonna take all her hair up, and I really do want her to have a lot of volume and flow. We'll start with this. If I am not sure where I want her layers, how short I want her layers, I will do an initial cut a little bit longer, let it drop down and see where it falls. And I really do want to take about another inch off her hair because the layers I initially cut, I felt were still too long for the style I have in mind for her. I want it to be long and flowy, but I want a certain bounce in her hair still. So I'm gonna take another inch off of this. I'm gonna shake her hair a little bit from the top to see where those layers are now hitting. Now I'm gonna bring all her hair up. I'm not gonna cut the length of her hair, but I'm gonna connect the haircut to make sure it matches, and I'm gonna connect the 2 points. This is where my first layer is, and this is what I have to cut in order to connect the top to the bottom of the haircut. I'm not cutting the length. This is still going to be the longest part of her hair. I'm just making it connect from the layers. I'm gonna begin to blunt, and then I go back and texturize and point cut just to make sure we have a smooth diffusion. So once again, I know this is blunt and very harsh, so that is where you go in with a texturizing point cutting technique to soften and diffuse that line. I'll drop it, comb it, and shake it out. So now I'm just gonna continue on from this guide and work towards the front and layering the rest of the hair. So what I've started doing is detailing her money pieces or her face framing pieces. By detailing those lines, I take paper thin sections around the entire face frame and take baby fine sections or baby lights and take a foil, apply it close, and then put the lightener over it. Now when I mixed my lightener, I mixed 2 scoops. That's just my preference. I don't like more than 2 scoops in a bowl at once. And I like the ratio to be 1:1, or sometimes on darker coarse hair, I do like it a little bit thicker. So I'll mix it a little bit thicker. For her front, because I am taking paper thin sections, 1:1 is gonna work really great for me. I added in the Formula 18 additive also to protect the hair and its porosity during its processing, especially because she has unicorn hair, as I call it. We want to keep it nice and healthy, especially in this first bleaching session. So now I am working on her money pieces. I did the first section of line detailing in her face framing, and for her hair, I'm not going to take any more than 2 to 3 foils back. If I take more than 2 or 3 foils, it can get too thick, so you have to look at how big her face is, the shape of her head, and if it is a little bit wider, you can take more. If she has a longer face, you can make them a little bit thicker. But if she has such a petite face and she has a really young look to her, I don't want to overwhelm her with chunky pieces that aren't flattering to her. So I'm going to take my next section. I started in the middle, use that as my guide, and work my way out. So she does have virgin hair, so meaning that she has virgin hair, I don't have to use an extreme developer. The texture of her hair, I would say, is medium, so she can get optimum results with either 20 or 30 volume. I chose to go with 30 for the simple fact that she is Hispanic, so I will be fighting a little bit of brass that will be able to push me through a little bit further. The added Formula 18 additive drops in there helps protect that in her hair. Now when I take this paper thin section, the reason it's paper thin is on dark hair, you absolutely have to. It's not so much about throwing 40 volume and leaving her on for an hour. It's about the size of the section and proper saturation. If it's evenly saturated, coated evenly and thoroughly in the bleach application and on the thin section, it will absorb and it will get us the results we want. Now I centered it over where her natural part line is because that is where it's gonna fall from and that's where it's gonna frame her face. Where her part line is the start of her face frame or the center point of her face frame. I'm gonna take my paper thin section and I'm gonna do a very fine weave. I'm gonna tease that section for diffusion. Now by teasing it or backcombing it, it's gonna help give me a better blend in the final result when she is toned and styled. When you apply your foils to get the tightest, whether it's a weave, face framing, or baby light, You bend the hair to the foil, you don't bend the foil to the hair. I'm gonna lift up the hair, I'm gonna lay the foil right where the end of the hair is, and I'm gonna drop it down. You can see how tight that foil is actually gonna be, and so it's gonna look like it comes straight out of her natural outgrowth, and we won't have such a harsh line to blend when we do go back in and tone. Your weave, or your sectioning should never be more than the width of your fingers when you throw the piece in. So if we stay in there, you won't be spread so thin. The application will also be fluid and you won't have, again, zigzags or uneven patterns. So now I'm gonna start from the middle, brush down, make sure I apply it towards the top as close as I can, and make sure that she is completely and evenly saturated. I'm gonna fold the foil up slightly above the bottom of it, flip it forward, push this down a little bit. That way we make sure that the lightener doesn't bleed over to the other side when I flip it back over. I think I'm gonna take one more piece off the center, and I'm gonna repeat the same process here and continue it to flow out around her face framing pieces. After that, I'm going to move on to the back. I'm gonna part her in an under halo pattern that I like to utilize for girls that are coming from solid dark. It's gonna give them really good movement and dimension. Throughout the process, especially if they've been sitting for a little while, I'll start to check the foils that I initially put in at first. These are already pulled to the level of my want for her overall goal. So I pulled them out, wiped them with my finger, and then sprayed the F18 leave-in conditioner to stop the oxidation process. Rubbed my finger through it to make sure it covered it, just because I want the oxidation to completely stop, and I'm gonna continue to work. So we have been pulling out her foils as she's finally to the level of lift that I want her to be. Now we're checking the elasticity to make sure that it is still in good health and standing. And it is a great color, her hair is healthy, and she has unicorn virgin hair. So I kind of expected that, and knowing that she already had healthy hair going into this, I knew that I could push the limits a little bit utilizing the lightener and the F18 additive, just to make sure I keep everything nice and tight and healthy. But what I'm gonna do right now is I'm gonna pull out a section, and this is either gonna be a pre-tone, or I'm gonna see if I can actually completely tone her to the level I want. It would be safe for me to go ahead and just do a toning shampoo from the F18 line, because the way I diffused this and detailed her hairline is smooth. There is no harsh lines that I have to worry about diffusing with the shadow root. And it is a little bit tedious to detail lines like that, but it makes our end work so much easier. So I'm gonna pull out this section, and I'm gonna get some of the Formula 18 Violet Toning Shampoo. I'm gonna start a little bit heavier and emulsify that between my fingers and her hair. Now with this, I'm just gonna watch it and see how it's moving the hair, see how the hair is absorbing it, and see if it pulls a tone that I'm happy with, that I think will flatter her nicely. If it does, then I will continue to move on and do this to the rest of her hair. My favorite part about the F18 toning shampoos is because it is the only one on the market that is pH balanced, which is so essential to maintaining your hair, to maintaining your blonde. With other toning shampoos, it blows open the cuticle that you just did a chemical process on, therefore potentially damaging it even more. So with the F18 toning shampoo, it locks it tight, seals the cuticle, therefore locking in the pigment we just deposited. So long term, you will get more for your money out of the Violet toning shampoo, and you will have healthier results, which to me is more key than anything. As you can see, the Violet toning shampoo is already changing the hue of the color. It's correcting out the yellow that was in the untoned hair, and it's making it this really nice, soft blonde, almost like a sand color, which is kind of what I'm shooting for. So I'm gonna continue to let this sit a few more minutes, rinse it out, analyze it, and if I'm happy with what it's doing, and thus far I am, I'm gonna continue the process. So we just did a quick little blow dry, just a rough blow dry, just so I can see how it's laying, how the color is coming through. As you can see right here, we achieved the color I was going for, a soft blonde, almost beige tone. And like I mentioned earlier when I was foiling, it's heavier on the bottom and it just kind of wisps out. It kind of trickles and melts together. That way it has kind of like a seamless blend in transition. I'm pretty happy with how her hair pulled on my little unicorn. especially on her money pieces. As I talked about, those are the framing pieces. So I'm gonna get her blow dry going. I'm gonna utilize the volumizing blow dry gel from the Holistic line. It smells so good, I just wanna eat it. I can smell it through my mask. Just a little bit, and I wanna really emphasize the volume in these curtain bangs that I'm creating and near her scalp, just so we can continue to have that lift in her hair and that movement. So I'm gonna go ahead and get that started. I'm gonna blow dry her completely, then I'm gonna move upstairs to finish blow drying and styling as well. Okay, so I'm gonna create some effortless beach waves on her. My curling technique is something that I get a lot of comments on. I actually even have client tutorials that I offer to teach them how to create my curls, because they are very distinct. I've had other stylists also say, like, oh, those are Vanessa's curls, because they are, I guess, something that is harder to recreate. So I'm gonna show how to do that. I also did curtain bangs on my model. I'm gonna show how I emphasize those to really display and show off that they are curtain bangs. I'm gonna take this finishing spray and I'm gonna show how you can hold curls on thin, finer, or even really straight hair like my client today. So a lot of people use hairspray incorrectly for this. It actually creates more weight than support. So I'm gonna take the Enjoy finishing spray and I'm gonna just grab her hair and just kind of tousle it and make sure that it's kind of somewhat evenly dispersed. She looks a little crazy, but there's a method to my madness. And do it a little bit in her bangs too. Then you're gonna take your brush and just comb it through. So what this does is it creates that grit and hold that it needs, but by applying it before we put the curling iron to it and combing it through, it breaks it up so it doesn't come out hard or crunchy. So what I'm gonna do next is I'm gonna take diagonal partings in the hair. And like I mentioned, when I was doing her color, I did it heavy underneath and a little wispier on top. I did it wispy, that way when she wears it straight, she has that soft transition. But when we curl it, that's when everything is really gonna pop and the look is gonna stand out. So I'm gonna take my curling iron and I'm gonna take small sections on the front, near the front of her face, in front of her ear. I'm gonna start curling from the top, release the clamp and cinch towards the ends. Hold it for just a few seconds, unwrap the first two, and drag the rest out. We have to still press the hair, because if we don't, if you are doing this on a client that does have textured or frizzy hair, the ends of it won't lay nicely and it will continue to lay frizzy, then they just won't look well. And I like to comb them out immediately because I don't want them to stay too curly or too tight. And by combing the curl out before it cools, it is still breaking down those disulfide bonds. So once the curl cools, the disulfide bonds reform, and that is what holds the curl. That is what reforms the hair. So that's why I do it then. And I'm just gonna repeat the process throughout her entire hair. So a lot of people say that your curls don't come out in the same way that your stylist does. My reasoning for, or my belief I should say, for that is the angle that we are standing in front of your hair, your head. Now, I want my curls to go straight down and follow that pattern all the way around her entire head. I don't want everything to be dramatic and go swooshing back. That's a little bit more elegant, and I want something just kind of easy to wear everyday loose style. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take this hair. As I can see, it lays kind of flat this way. So I'm gonna take this section, I'm gonna position my body this way to pull the hair in a different angle. I'm going to press the hair down, loosen the first two, and drag the ends out. That way this angle just brings it all forward the way I want it to. So I did do a curtain bang accent on her hair, and the way I like to style these is I like to curl the entire head first just to see how the curls are gonna lay. And you can see right now it's laying really pretty, but I really want to emphasize them. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take, go ahead and look straight for me, right there, perfect. I'm gonna take the center of her hair and I'm gonna roll it under. I'm gonna use the same rolling technique that I used to get volume on the top and the curtain bangs as well. I'm gonna swoop up, out, and down to the side. That's gonna give me the lift that I want in the front of her bang area. And I'm gonna follow the entire face frame and repeat the process. This is again also about body position. I have to start in front of her and pull it the way that I want it to go. Okay, so by doing this, just at the top of the hair, you can see we already get a little bit of texture, volume, and we create that lived in, I woke up like this, it's messy, it's intentional, almost like sexy, sassy feel. And I'm gonna do that all around the entire top portion of the head. And you can tell the complete difference between this side's laying a little bit flatter and this side is volumized and textured. I'm really happy with what we were able to do and what we were able to create. I am super pleased to say that this is only toner with a violet toning shampoo. So I'm very pleased with this beige kind of soft blonde tone. That was my initial goal from the start.
Thank you so much for joining us today and checking out Sorority House Salon. Be sure to like and subscribe and never miss an episode.